Chapter 3 Fashioning a New Society in the Wilderness. During the fall of the Roman Empire, land was stolen from local farmers and given to the wealthy, who allowed the farmers to stay on their land under the condition that they rendered their services. This was the way of medieval society. It was hierarchical and not capitalistic. Commodities were bartered, and land was not able to be bought as it remained in noble families for generations. During this time, the Catholic Church was the only recognized church and was closely involved in government institutions. Those who wanted to reform the church were met with prosecution and at times even death. Social issues were addressed among peers and family and mutual obligations. For example, villagers shared crops with one another, and the church assumed social welfare by giving food and funding money to the poor. Although social programs were small, this does not hide the fact that medieval society was organized to provide both economic and social security. Despite this, feudal society was flawed because of the economic and social disparities that existed between serfs and noblemen. Serfs could not move up in the social ladder, were permanently bound to land, and could not migrate. The feudal society eventually fell as the economy changed from barter and subsistence to capitalistic. However, the emergence of capitalism came with its consequences. Out of this came the uncertainty of problems such as inflation, depressions, unemployment, and displacement. The fall of feudalism brought new political theories into light. Mercantilism was evolved by the 1600s and anticipated that developing colonies in the New World would bring new markets and provide new raw materials. More political and social policies were developed to soon be carried out in the new colonies. One was the Elizabethan Poor Law Act of 1601, which allowed the local government to provide relief for the poor, the elderly, and the sick. This law has been considered the model for social welfare today. Punitive policies also emerged by this time. A few included restrictive interpretations of the Elizabethan Poor Law, denial of civil liberties to the poor, and harsh use of laws of settlement. Children were apprenticed or indentured at an early age and forced to work rigorously. Sexism was also prominent, as women were not allowed to read in many places. When the settlers arrived in the New World, the culture and institutions that they created closely resembled that of the European nations. Social structure was hierarchical, and early life was tightly regulated. Between 1750 and 1800, changes began to be made. The most powerful transforming factor in the New World was access to land. 2/3 of colonists owned land compared to the 1/5 of English citizens. As time went on, the feudal-like norms and traditions were soon worn out. As they were fashioning new, distinct institutions, the Crown continued to impose regulations, and wanting to break away, the Americans fought for independence to establish a society built on individualism and freedom. When the Constitution was written, it failed to mention social policy as a federal responsibility due to the assumption that local institutions would suffice due to the poor law traditions and that the federal government had scarce resources to provide. Even in the New World, women were oppressed as their economic roles were restricted, they had few legal protections, they did not have the right to vote, and they were excluded from professions. The first Americans were exploited by violence and coercion, displaced from their rightful lands, forced to convert to Christianity, and subjected to illnesses brought over by the settlers. Today we look back upon the failed policies of the colonial era and take them into consideration as we create policies concerning the issues we have today.